Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. September has been a really tough month. Now, typically it does slow down during September, and I'm always reminded. My wife comes and tells me, remember last year, remember the year before that. But within the last 3 to 4 years, this has definitely been the toughest or slowest September that I've had. Just to give you an idea, I do take my family vacations during September, and that's mostly because everybody's at school, things start to slow down in the market. My kids are homeschooled, so it doesn't really matter as far as the school schedule goes. We get to enjoy vacation, maybe at a little bit less expensive of a price, and then also less crowded. But this year in particular is absolutely no exception. It is noticeably slower. The market drastically shifted from a couple of years ago. Buyer demand is definitely not what it was before, and you have a lot of factors that are involved with that. Not to mention everything that's going on with all these new rules for realtors and everybody trying to figure that out and trying to find out what is going to be the best way possible, putting in offers, where am I putting the buyer compensation? A lot of questions that are going on. So in a time of a slowdown, you mix that in with uncertainty with realtors, and then you mix that in with interest rates. They're talking about interest rates coming down, but when? So all of this uncertainty is really where we have this slowdown in our market. While we haven't hit a full-blown crash, correction, whatever you want to call it, we're definitely seeing that slowing down, making things a little bit tricky for buyers, sellers, and even agents. So today I'm going to break down all of that and what you need to know if you're going to list your house right now. One of the biggest things that you've probably heard on the news, you've probably seen this around, is that we're definitely doing business differently. One of the biggest changes and one of the biggest challenges that we're really having right now is that buyers, agents, commissions are no longer automatically tied to the seller. They're not even listed on the MLS anymore. That's right. If you're browsing homes on Zillow, Realtor.com, or the MLS, you won't see buyer commission anywhere on there anymore. We don't know how they're getting paid. Well, we know how they're getting paid. That's going to be through negotiation and all that. But as far as when you look at the listing, you're not going to know, okay, are they going to be working with a buyer's agent? Are they going to be compensating that buyer's agent? And for how much? Don't know that anymore. And this isn't just for Orlando. This is for across the country. Another big change is that buyers have to sign an agreement with a buyer's agent before they even show a single house. This is even including virtual tours. So if you wanted to see a house with an agent, you have to have a signed agreement with that buyer's agent, talking about the compensation and talking about what exactly your relationship is with them. And what I mean by relationship is, what are the parameters? Do you have an agreement that they're going to show you a group of houses? Do you have an agreement that they're going to show you for a certain amount of time? Do you have an agreement that they're going to show you for a zip code? There's a lot of different ins and outs to this. But no matter what it is, this all needs to be squared away before you enter that door. So you'll be signing a buyer's agent agreement in some way before you see houses. And that could be a lot of different types of documents. However, in the state of Florida, we're really lucky. The Florida Bar Association really writes up all of our stuff. You could have things that are not from the Florida Bar Association, but really when you're doing a real estate transaction in Central Florida, typically you're using the as-is contract, which was made by the Florida Bar Association. So it really only makes sense that you're gonna have the document come from them as well. Kind of just protects both parties. In Central Florida, those are really boilerplate contracts. So in other words, they're the same for every single person. They're the same for every contract. It maybe switches the brokerage name or something like that, but other than that, it's the same. The one thing I will caution you though is that if you are signing this, make sure that the agent hasn't added anything in like an addendum or added any kind of extra verbiage without explaining to you first. It is important, at least the first time that you see it, it is important to see exactly what you're signing, read through it, just like any kind of advice, which I'm not giving legal advice, but I would say with any contract, make sure you're at least understanding what it is. And if you don't, that's why you have a realtor to say, oh, that's what this means, and this is what that means, and it's a lot easier. As a seller, this also means that you're not necessarily paying the buyer or the buyer's agent for the commission or compensation, right? Commission's a bad word now. We're going to say compensation. Now that's a separate negotiation that comes in. When a buyer agent submits an offer, that's going to be written into the contract or written into the offer to show exactly what they're being compensated on. And now that's up for negotiation, just like anything else in the contract. Ever since these changes have hit, the buyer's agents will call me, and the first question they inevitably ask me is, are the sellers cooperating with buyer agent compensation? It's definitely a hot topic right now. And my advice to the seller is, I would just see what happens, see what comes in. I wouldn't say that I'm gonna necessarily take this percent or this percent. That doesn't make any sense right now. At the end of the day, Keep an open mind because different offers are going to give you different things. It's just like anything else in the contract now. These are terms in the contract which can be negotiated, and then you see and compare apples to apples. Let's give an example for what I'm talking about. So there's two offers that came in on this house. One was for $700,000 with a 2% buyer's commission, and one was $715,000 with a 2.5% buyer's commission. All right, math warning. We're gonna be doing some math, so warning, right? So we're doing 700,000 times the 2%, so times 0.02, and that's going to equal $14,000. You're going to take that 14,000 and then you're going to subtract it from the 700. So you're 700 minus 14 and you're looking at 686. So that's what your net is for that house, $686,000. Let's look at the other option. Now you're looking at 715 or 715,000 times 0.025, which is really 2.5%, right? We carried the decimal spots, 2 spots. And that number comes out to be $17,875. So we're going to take that $17,875 and we're going to subtract that from the $715,000. So you could see here, even though the buyer's commission was higher on the one, it actually gave them the higher net to take the contract that had the higher buyer commission. So again, focus on the big picture. I don't know if you've noticed this, but you've also seen a whole heck of a lot more open houses that are going on right now. And the reason for that is that because buyers don't necessarily want to sign a buyer's agreement from just meeting somebody and saying, you know, I'm going to commit myself to this person for X amount of days. So open houses are an opportunity more so than ever to get buyers to come into the house and get as many eyeballs on the property as possible. This is a change that has happened, and I really tell all of my sellers, we got to kind of adjust to this because I know some people don't want people in their house. They don't want the open house to have a big crowd of people. They don't want those things going on. Right now, this is in that slow time, so you got to kind of do what's necessary. And really what I think is necessary is definitely at least hosting one open house for the opening weekend of that home. I will do follow-up open houses, but the first one is the real pop. That's the one that you get as many people as possible. You get that excitement going for the house, and it really gets the ball rolling as far as momentum. Now you need that momentum because typically right now, this is the longer sales cycle. I know 3 or 4 years ago, you would put your house for sale, put a sign in the yard, and all of a sudden it's sold that day, 5 offers, fantastic. It's just a different market now. We're looking at a much slower market. So it's something to be aware of when you are putting your house for sale. Have some patience. Just to give you an idea, here in East Orlando, in May, there were about 940 homes for sale. Right now, there's about 2,800 homes for sale. That's a 40% increase in inventory. If you look really specific, so for my area, 32828, it was even more drastic. It went from 80 homes in the beginning of May to now where we're sitting at about 130. That's over a 60% increase in inventory. A huge reason because of that, the longer sales cycle. Houses aren't being put on the market at a faster pace. It's just slowed down to selling at a slower pace. So it's not selling as many houses in the inventory as it did before, hence the inventory building. And inventory building means that it shifts more towards the buyer because there's more out there to choose from. There's more options for that buyer. And some people have to move, so they're adjusting their prices. And when you have more competition, you have lower prices. So if you're a seller, my recommendation to you is make sure you get all those little fixes and making the house really pop. Check out the video to where I give you 5 tips to avoid in selling, but really there's a lot of good information as far as what you need to be doing to get your house ready to put it onto the market right now. Another thing that has people on the sidelines right now, which I brushed upon earlier, is the interest rates. So the Fed has talked about interest rates slowly ticking down for the next year. But what does that actually mean? Nobody knows. You can only guess. When you have that uncertainty, you really have people that are hesitant to pull the trigger on buying a house. In the average election year, from pulling numbers from 1987, there has been a 4.84 increase in housing prices. Now on non-election years, there's been 4.44 increase. Typically, you actually have an increase in sales price. So it's just something to be aware of. There's going to be some news out there or propaganda, whatever. This is that the media that just completely serves itself. I don't necessarily believe what certain newscasts will say. So for my sellers, hang in there. I know it's tough and there are a ton of factors that are going into why it's tough right now, but stay with it. The market has definitely changed, but we just have to shift our expectations on what's going to be normal. So you're not freaking yourself out and stressing out like, oh my goodness, my house isn't sold in 3 days. What am I gonna do? Keep an open mind on your price to where looking at competition that comes in. So if a house that's just like yours that goes up on the market, 2 weeks after you put yours on the market and it happens to be much less expensive, or it happens to have better upgrades, something like that, just be aware. That's going to either take some more time, or you're going to have to be flexible in moving price or something like that. It might feel like a grind, but we're going to get through this. If you found this video helpful, please hit subscribe. Thanks a lot.